The Edmonton Oilers have taken a 2-1 series lead in the Battle of Alberta after their best game in the playoffs so far. What went well? Just how good is Zach Hyman? And the good, the bad, and the ugly from games 2 and 3 coming up on today's episode of Locked On Oilers.
You're Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Oilers podcast. I'm your host, Brett Holden. How was your weekend, Oil Country? What a weekend for Oil Country and the Edmonton Oilers as they sealed 2 games from the Calgary Flames, one in Calgary and one in Edmonton on Friday and Sunday as games 2 and 3 went. Isn't that a sigh of relief after the first game? The 9-6 was always in everybody's heads, but the Edmonton Oilers are able to finish those first 3 games at least with a lead in the series. 2-1 for the Oilers. On today's episode, we are going to talk about just what went well for the Oilers. There are a lot of things that the Oilers have fixed from game 1 that have really been successful for the Oilers in games 2 and in game 3. So we will talk about that as well. Plus, let's talk about the children's book author. I think that's all he does. I don't think he's an Edmonton Oiler at all, or one of the leading scorers in the Battle of Alberta. Zach Hyman has been the best Oiler so far, or one of the best Oilers, other than Connor McDavid, let's be real, in this series so far. So we will talk about just how effective he has been, plus the good and the bad and the ugly, all from games 2 and 3. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you find your podcasts. And we're here on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. How are you? If you are looking at me, I have the Bayern Munich kit on, the good old soccer jersey on. As on the back is Alphonso Davies, as Alphonso Davies was in the crowd for game 3 in Edmonton. It was his first ever playoff game, as he said, and hey, the German superstar in Leon Draisaitl showed out, and the rest of the Edmonton Oilers, for that matter, showed out for Alphonso Davies and the home crowd, and the first home playoff game in the Battle of Alberta in Edmonton in over 30 years. And the Edmonton Oilers in 2022 showed out. What a game for the Oilers, as it was arguably the best game that they have played all playoffs. And this was after in the last series we even had an episode where the Oilers had the worst game they've ever played in the playoffs. Well, then that was followed up by a very tough game 1 performance, but the Edmonton Oilers in game 3 looked like they just shut down a mid-table, mid-standings team. The Edmonton Oilers in game 3 made the Calgary Flames almost look not like a playoff team. At times, I should say at times, because let's be real, at times the Calgary Flames were able to make the Edmonton Oilers at least have some pressure from the Oilers. But let's take a look at what the Oilers did well. Let's just start with that. Let's start on a good note, Oil Country. They started on time. In game 3, especially. In game 2, not so much, as obviously they did allow the first 2 goals in that game as well, and they just weren't really in it to start that game. It was the same story in game 2, but in game 3, it was a totally different story. They started early. They had the best first period that they've had all playoffs, and that is in a series, and that is coming from a series, I should say, where the Oilers won also a 4-0 game, a massive 6. They scored 6 goals in one game as well. I'm already past the LA Kings game series. I can't even remember that series, but it was the best first period that they have had all of the playoffs. Just really neutralized the offense of the Flames, so much so that the Oilers actually outshot the Calgary Flames in the first period 20-7, taking the game of the Calgary Flames right to them and to Jacob Markstrom as well. Plus, the Edmonton Oilers scored the first goal of the game. Finally, thank you. Oh my goodness, thank you. The Oilers scored the first 4 goals, in fact, of the game. When you're scoring the first 4 goals of game, you're probably going to win that hockey game, but you never know with the Battle of Alberta. Also, if you're scoring, that means you're shooting the puck more. As we have said, the Oilers need to get shots on Jacob Markstrom. Jacob Markstrom has not looked strong at all. In fact, game 3 was the strongest he's looked in the entire series, and he still got pulled in game 3. The Oilers peppered Jacob Markstrom with shots, and the Oilers got their just rewards. 41 shots for the Oilers in game 3, 41-33, as the Flames did manage to get 33 shots on Mike Smith in game 3. But what a game for Mike Smith. What a game for Mike Smith. We will get to him in just a second, but let's also just finish up this thought on the shots. 20 shots for the Oilers in the first period of game 3. Also following that up, following a very impressive 40-shot performance in game 2, where they ended up almost chasing as well Jacob Markstrom, who let in 5 goals. Let's not forget that. The Oilers scored 5 goals on Jacob Markstrom. And as Jay Woodcroft said in his post-game presser after game 2, I mean, 2 goals got called back on kind of phantom calls. So realistically, the Oilers have managed to get 7 goals past Jacob Markstrom in game 2. Then you go into game 3, they scored 4. 7 plus 4 is 11, plus the 6 you scored in game 1 as well. I'm trying to put the 11 to the 6. 17 goals, theoretically at least, with those 2 extras, those 2 phantom goals, have gotten past Jacob Markstrom because of the shots the Oilers have produced. Massive upgrade for the Oilers there. Also, a massive upgrade for the Oilers in their physicality, as well as they're getting hits from everybody. Connor McDavid can't be the guy leading your team in hits. While he may be the guy who not necessarily wants to, but will be the guy who will lead your team in hits if he has to, the rest of the Oilers have stepped up. In game 3 alone, Evander Kane had 10 hits along with his hat trick in game 3. 10 hits. Connor McDavid over the last 2 games, in games 2 and 3, had 7 hits. Kyler Yamamoto over 2 and 3 had 6 hits, and Darnell Nurse over the last 2 games also had 6 hits. Evander Kane in game 3 alone, 10 hits. 10. They out-hit the Flames 38-36 in game 3. And then, as well, the Flames out-hit the Oilers in game 2, 40-27, which was a very different scene from game 3. But you get the difference of the crowd. Every time the Oilers were going into a body check, no matter what, even if it was the Oilers guy getting the worst of it, the crowd was getting into it, and that just produces energy on the ice. Massive for the Oilers in their physicality department, and massive for the Oilers to get that going for the rest of the series. We all know that this is going to be a banging series, so you got to get that going. 2 really quick things here for the Oilers as well, just before we move on to Zach Hyman, the best Oiler or most consistent Oiler so far in the series. It's got to be the penalty kill. The penalty kill in the last 2 games, 8 of 9 when given the penalty kill opportunity. In the last goal that the Oilers have allowed on the penalty kill, well, the only goal that they have allowed on the penalty kill in the last 2 games was the second goal, or the third goal, I should say, in the second game, the Tyler Toffoli power play goal. And before the Oliver Shillington goal, In game 3, late in game 3, that was the last goal that the Oilers had allowed at 5-on-5 on the penalty kill in the entire series. That power play goal was the last one that the Oilers had allowed in the whole entire series until Oliver Shillington gets his first power play goal in his career. Massive game for the Edmonton Oilers, massive 2 games for the Edmonton Oilers, but that couldn't have been done without the help of Zach Hyman, as Zach Hyman has, I've already mentioned how he's been one of the most productive Oilers so far, most consistent so far for the Oilers, but what an acquisition so far Zach Hyman has been. We'll talk a little bit more in just a second about Zach Hyman and what he has done for the Edmonton Oilers. But first, our next partner has a product that I use literally every day. And I started taking AG1 because I wanted a supplement that actually tasted great, that is good for my health, that optimized my immune system, and actually gave my gut some good health and actually gave it a great feeling throughout the rest of the day. And that is exactly what I get with Athletic Greens. So, what is Athletic Greens? What is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you are absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, your recovery, your focus, your aging, all of those things. I wasn't just naming off random things here. Those are actually things that Athletic Greens helps you out with. I got my parents on Athletic Greens, and I actually get text messages from them going, "Thank you so much for actually getting us on this." It is something they use as well every day. It is lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, or gluten free. It is friendly to you. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, all while still tasting good. Plus, it costs less than $3 a day. That means you're investing your health. You're investing rather in your health. Plus, it is much cheaper than that cold brew addiction that you currently have, which I'm shaking. I am getting out of it. I swear. It's getting to this Athletic Greens. It just takes a second. Athletic Greens also has over 7,000 five-star reviews and is recommended by professional athletes everywhere. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. That is it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. That is insane. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Athletic Greens. Very good product. Very good product. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. For your next listen after this one, make sure you check out Locked On Now for nightly recaps of every NHL game with analysis from our local experts. It is free and available wherever you find your podcast. And it's on YouTube as well. Alrighty, let's move on to Zach Hyman, as he has been in the social media realm a lot. If you're on Oilers Twitter, I mean, every day it seems like, hey, good morning, Oilers Twitter. Just a reminder, Zach Hyman's an Edmonton Oilers. A lot of people really hated on the Zach Hyman signing. I mean, basically, whenever the Oilers sign anybody, there's a lot of hate on the Edmonton Oilers. There's a lot of hate on just how much Zach Hyman was going to get paid. Let's be real here. Zach Hyman was going to get paid no matter what. No matter who signed him this season, he was going to get paid. It really depended on him. All that mattered was who was going to overpay for Zach Hyman. And to be honest with you, the Edmonton Oilers didn't overpay a cent. Zach Hyman has been worth each and every penny. In this series alone, 13 shots on goal from Zach Hyman in games 2 and 3. That's it. In only games 2 and 3, he has 13 shots on goal, 16 in the series with 4 goals so far. 4 of them. In his entire career in the playoffs, he has 10 goals, 10 assists for 20 points in 41 games. This year alone, 5 goals, 2 assists, for 7 points. He has half the amount of goals, playoff goals, that he has scored in his career just in these playoffs alone. He's played 41 total. That means, he has 9 games played so far for the Edmonton Oilers. Well, 10 now after last night. 10 for the Oilers. And 9, I'm great at math. I am fantastic at math. Yes, but he has played 31 games, over 30 games in the playoffs for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he only had 5 goals and 8 assists. Now he comes to the Edmonton Oilers and is able to give the support to guys like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl that they need that relief. Zach Hyman is willing to go into those corners. He has the hands to have success around the net. The guy has beautiful hands around the net. Plus, he's got acceleration like anybody else on the team. To be fair, you also have Connor McDavid to compare yourself to in that realm. So let's be realistic here. But Zach Hyman is very impressive with his first step. And you saw that on his breakaway game-winning goal in Game 2. He burst out of the defensive zone and got into open ice, got on a breakaway, and sniped that baby. The cold ice in his veins to bring the Oilers into a lead for the first time in the series. That was the first time the Oilers ever had the lead in the series. And who was it that helped the Oilers get that lead? Zach Hyman. Now, I mentioned Zach Hyman's goal. That goal came off of him coming out of the defensive zone. Zach Hyman isn't only a guy who's going to go out there and do stuff and bang bodies in the offensive zone. No, the guy has a full 200-foot game. In Game 3, he had 3 minutes and 39 seconds on the penalty kill alone. In Game 2, he had 3 minutes and 3 seconds on the penalty kill. And in total, 7 minutes and 39 seconds on the penalty kill. What? This guy has 4 goals in the series, has been one of the most productive guys offensively for your team, but he's also the most trusted guy defensively for your team as well. Oilers fans, doesn't that feel fantastic? When was the last time the Edmonton Oilers have had a guy that can do it in their own end and in the offensive end? Other than Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. A lot of people love to hate on Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and I'm not saying Oilers fans, so I hear Oilers fans getting on Nugent-Hopkins, or getting on me for getting on Nugent-Hopkins already. I get that. But a lot of people don't realize just how important Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is with a full 200-foot game. Honestly, and I'm going to get into this in a future episode, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is the most underrated first overall pick probably of all time. But this isn't about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. This is about the way Ryan Nugent-Hopkins plays. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins can play a full 200-foot game, but he has been the only guy for the Oilers for years who can do that. Now the Oilers have a guy in Zach Hyman and in Ryan Nugent-Hopkins who can go out there and be shut down in your own end and produce something offensively in the other end. And that is why the Edmonton Oilers are currently up 2-1 in this series. It is. Excuse me. It truly is. It truly is. As the Edmonton Oilers don't have to just trust on the speed and the transition, which every single goal for the Oilers in game 3 was on the transition. But the Edmonton Oilers don't have to just rely on 97 and 29 to go and do that. They can rely on 56 and 18 to go and do that. Yamamoto and Hyman. They can go and trust Evander Kane and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They can trust Ryan McLeod and Josh Archibald. I don't care. The Edmonton Oilers finally have guys, including Zach Hyman, that are giving the Oilers a chance to win hockey games. They are. Other than and taking the load off Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl all at the same time. All right, let's get into the good, the bad, and the ugly from game 3 and game 2 as well. We're going to throw a little bit of game 2 as well into it as we head into game 4 on Tuesday. Oh, it's so nice to have a lead going into that game. We'll get into that in just a second, but first, I want to tell you about our partners at BetOnline. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your sporting and betting needs and sports info. Find the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's NHL hockey playoffs, baby, as I got a sneaking suspicion that the Oilers might have some better odds come Monday and Tuesday heading into game 4 for our series. So watch out for that on BetOnline. Plus, Major League Baseball's in full swing. Joey Votto got a home run on home ice. Oh, home ice. Excuse me, on home ice. At the Rogers Center, his first home run, or one of the first home runs for Joey Votto, the Canadian in Canada. Plus, excuse me, even the NFL futures are out there as well. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. Where we are going to end is with the good, the bad, and the ugly from games 3, and we'll throw in a little bit of game 2 as well as I go and reach for my notes for the final period of today's episode. Let's just take a moment and realize, hey, what a weekend it was. It was a long weekend, as yes, you're probably listening to this on long weekend Monday. I hope you had a terrific long weekend. First of all. Second of all, how about a long weekend after 2 straight Edmonton Oilers victories? Wow. In the Battle of Alberta. Unbelievable. All righty, let's get into the good, the bad, and the ugly, starting with the good, and that is the Oilers' transition play. All 4 goals for the Oilers in game 3 came from the transition. And a lot of people have been talking about, and especially in the intermission show with Elliot Friedman and Kevin Bieksa and Jen Botterill for the game 3, excuse me. A lot of them did mention that it could be because Chris Tanev has been missing time for the Calgary Flames just on the assignments, what they need to do on the transition. This was kind of something that we talked about as well with Jess in the crossover episode with Locked On Flames. Was with Chris Tanev out, it kind of jumbles up the defensive lines for the Flames, and the Edmonton Oilers have taken advantage of that. All 4 goals for the Oilers in game 3 were on the transition. I mean, let's be real. 3 of them were also Evander Kane goals. 3 of them were also assisted by Connor McDavid. Kind of difficult to deal with. All 4 goals on the transition in game 3, plus the goal, Zach Hyman goal in game 3, or in game 2 rather, excuse me, comes on the transition as well. Big game for, or big transition game, I should say, for the Oilers in game 3s and in game 2, excuse me. Let's get into the bad, as the bad is that the Oilers kind of let the Flames back into the game in at the end of the game 3. I'll be honest with you. After that second period, I was almost calling series. The Edmonton Oilers had the Flames so flat that even I mentioned that they looked like a mid-standings team, middle of the standings team. It looked like the series was over. Those saves on Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk in the second period, as soon as that happened, I wrote down, said series over. The crowd was too loud. The Oilers were too overbearing. They were just giving nothing to the Calgary Flames. And then Oliver Shillington scored late in the game. Then the Oilers kind of took some silly penalties. I mean, there was the 5-minute major on Milan Lucic that was called, which we haven't even gotten into as well in that. But the Oilers kind of got flat in that third period and kind of let Calgary sneak back some confidence in this series. Maybe something to watch out for. Maybe I'm getting a little too far ahead of myself. I know a lot of people weren't really happy with me that I said the Flames were going to win this series. But after last night, the Edmonton Oilers just gave nothing to the Flames in game 3. And even in game 2, when they really started to run away with game 2, there was just nothing going for the Flames. And that confidence has to be battered for the Flames until you let in that late goal. You got to keep the pedal down for the full 60 minutes. It seemed like the Oilers kind of got off the gas a little bit in the third period, and they got to stay on it. They got to make sure that the Flames are out of the game. So I think the bad for game 3 is that they let the Flames back into it in the third period. And let's get to the ugly. As I'm going to twist the word once again a little bit, the ugly in game 3 was Connor McDavid. Because what that man can do on the ice is just ugly. Well, not even what he does on the ice. What he can do to the opposing team is ugly. Because they just look silly. They don't look like NHLers. They look like career ECHLers. Not even guys who are just trying to make it into the league. They look like career ECHLers. For Connor McDavid, 3 assists in game 3. Let me read off the milestones that he accomplished in game 3. He is the fastest to 20 points in the playoffs since 1992. The guy that he catches up to, Mario Lemieux. Pretty decent. Yeah, not bad. In game 3 as well, Connor McDavid is the first ever. This is the first ever. He is the first ever player to have 9 multi-point games in the first 10 games of the playoffs. 9. Out of the 10 games he has played in the playoffs, 9 of them, he has multiple points in. Connor McDavid, ladies and gentlemen, let's be real here. He is the greatest player in the world, and the best players need to be your best players in the playoffs, and that is exactly what the Edmonton Oilers are getting. Will they get more of that in game 4? We shall see on Tuesday at 7:30 local time here in Edmonton. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. On tomorrow's episode, we're going to get more into just what the Oilers need to do in game 4 to really get a massive chokehold on this series in the Battle of Alberta. Plus, will we see Dylan Holloway at all in this series? We will see in tomorrow's episode as well, plus so much more. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. For your next listen, make sure you tune in to Locked On NHL, from the first round matchups to each and every single kiss on Lord Stanley's Cup. Locked On NHL has you covered for the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It is free and available wherever you find your podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in once again today, as I hope you have a wonderful Monday. Let's have a terrific week, Oil Country. I hope you had a terrific weekend. Stay safe. Don't do anything I wouldn't do.